Hi, and welcome to December 2021 Patreon rewards video. All right, so gotta talk a little bit about this month's artwork, and I am unhappy to say that this month there is no digital art. So silver patrons don't get any PSDs or any high-res files, Photoshop files, because I didn't do any digital art. It was all traditional art today and this month. And on top of that, none of the traditional art that I did was personal. By which I mean stuff that I do for fun on my own. And this is why. So this is going to be a little bit of a learning moment, kind of. I'm going to talk about my learning moment that I had in my personal life at work. Okay, so and hopefully this is going to be helpful to anybody who wants to be a professional, especially in an animation industry, in the animation industry. In any way, in any capacity. So it comes down to the types of work and the type of work that I tend to do at work on the show, on the Simpsons TV show. On the TV show, I do storyboards. Now, there's two types of storyboards that I do have done and I tend to do. There's two different storyboard job positions on the show. There is the storyboard, the first pass storyboard, where you just get the script and then you just work out the storyboard and you work out the act that you're assigned, and then you work out the first pass of the show that everybody's going to use as a blueprint, like a comic. Like it's similar to a comic. You get the script and then you just make it come to life on your own. All right. And then there is storyboard revisions, which is what happens when the show is kind of the storyboards are timed in a form of a rough pass of the show. So they move to a certain extent so that you can see how it plays with the audio, with the dialogue, and the writers take a look at it. And then they make notes, and then they revise the script according to whatever they see is working and not working. And then the storyboard needs to be revised for that per the changes. My job has been in some. I have done the first pass boards before, but the job that I tend to do is revisions. The thing about doing revisions, though, is that sometimes the revisions are lengthy and heavy. Sometimes they're very light, which means that when I'm done in a light written show, I'm done really fast, and then there's nothing for me to do. So what the show tends to do is then, and they've started doing this recently. Usually, even when it's a light rewrite, I'm still doing boards, and then they have me do more boards or do other stuff. But recently, there's been a change. So they schedule my time instead of giving me a strict amount of time like they used to. Like it's always going to be 2 weeks, and no matter how quickly you're done, it's 2 weeks. When it's really done fast, they've changed that so that if I'm done, I'm done. So now, when I'm done, they put me on character layout, which is what I had done for 15 years. So I switched from boards to character layout. The problem is that boards, the assignment when you do boards is a little bit different than when you do character layout. When you're doing storyboards, you're thinking about composition, you're thinking about directing, You're thinking about what's the best way to present this information. You're thinking about cinema as a whole. You're thinking in a holistic way. You're thinking about what needs to be said and how it needs to be said, and then you execute that. And one of the things that happens in storyboard is that you have zero time to flesh anything out. So there's like the pressure and the deadlines are so heavy that you're trying as hard as possible to be clear, but not be anal with your art. Not to be you're not as careful as you ought to be because you need to get done because the time that you're given isn't very high, very much. It's very, very tight. It's almost the complete opposite when you're doing character layout. When you're doing character layout, it's all about minutia. It's all about, does this line line up with this line? What's you're enhancing the composition. You're doing the acting. The acting of the characters is the most important thing, but the thing that's as important, equal importance, is the solidity and the model of the character. It needs to be not tight, but accurate. It needs to be that the model of the characters need to look precise within a very small margin of error, and they need to look really, really tight. And you can't be off. You can't have the hands be a little bit bigger. You can't have the nose be a little bit higher. You can't have the ear be a little bit too low. You have to have, it all has to be super tight, and you have to be aware of size relationships within the drawing. The execution needs to be really high caliber, very high quality. The problem is that I hadn't done character layout for years, and as often as I'm doing it now. And a lot of the bad habits that I got into doing boards, because of the time pressure, I was bringing to character layout, and I was shorthanding a lot of stuff that I absolutely shouldn't. This led to me turning in bad work, bad character layout work. And my friends at work who are in positions of like assistant directors were letting me know that the directors were extremely unhappy with the work that I was producing, because they had to be fixed. It had to be revised, right? My friends at work who were assistant directors got extremely angry at me because they had to do the fixing, because I ended up having to go back to doing boards. And then I would go back and doing that, and then back to doing boards, and then I would just be turning in stuff that they needed to fix, and they were so angry at me. They're like, "What were you thinking? You're giving me way more work than I need to do. I've already got a ton of work to do. Why are you having me fix your work? You should be doing the stuff right from the start." And then, so I had a really long conversation with one of my friends who just gave me an earful. And then he basically just, this is the thing that was, that I thought was just, I guess, I don't know, ironic, perfect. I don't know how to explain it. He was telling me stuff that I say in these videos. He was echoing the stuff that I would say about figure drawing, about construction, about like all the things that you have to think about. He was telling me that I wasn't doing that when I was doing the character layout. And I was like, how ironic, like how I wasn't following my own advice. So I said, you know what? This is beautiful. This is beautiful. Like I am. It was so humbling and great. I couldn't thank him enough for his feedback. And one of the things that it made me realize was that I study all this stuff outside of work. I study figure drawing, I study painting, I study like all this stuff. I was going to do sculpting these next few months. But after that conversation, I had to put all my personal stuff on pause because I needed to do for the show I was working on what I do for the stuff that I do for myself. I needed to sit down and study the characters again. It's not that I hadn't done it before. It's just that because it's been so long since I had to do character layout, I kind of forgotten the rules for the execution of the work in this format. So what I ended up doing was, instead of doing my personal work, instead of doing the studying that I was planning to do on just regular character stuff, I went and I did the exact same thing that I would have done for my personal stuff, for anatomy, for construction, on figure drawing and stuff like that. But I did it for the Simpsons characters. And the very first thing that I did was I said I wasn't going to do digital work. I was going to do it all in traditionally. So I took out my sketchbook and I started doing studies. But part of the thing that I can't share is how I broke down the characters in the model sheets. I can't be giving the model sheets out, and I can't be doing that. So what I did was I took the model sheets and I broke them down into things kind of, if you see the video where I broke down Robin of the Teen Titans animated, that's what I did for all the characters again. I had done it already in the past, but I did it again with my contemporary knowledge of how to do the work. And that takes time to break down the characters and do all the measuring and do all the proportions and what lines up with what and how big everything is and blah, 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 blah. Like, you have to learn how to do all that. So I did that with all the characters, and that took hours for every single character. And then after I did that, I filled up a page with the characters. So I'm going to show you what you're getting this month on Patreon. So here is Bart. Here's my Bart sketches based off of what I had sketched out in how I broke down the model sheet, and then I tested my work on paper on my sketchbook so that I could see, so like you could see that here's these lines here are proportional lines. I'm breaking all these things down, and then I'm also doing very just kind of more than just like this is the first one that I did, and it's kind of weird because it's kind of all bent that way. But I was just trying to get the proportions right. But this is not a good drawing of Bart because he's kind of bent, right? But the proportions were working, and so that's kind of what this was. And then I started like just playing around with the proportions, started playing around with the solidity. Everything needs to line up with what, like stuff like that. If he was bent like this, how would it look like? But these right here, like this looking down, is really, really difficult, because the model sheets don't really tell you how it works. So everything needs to line up just right, you know. So I did that with Bart, and so this was my study pass. This is the very, let me get back to that later. Then I did the same thing with Homer And I was making sure here that my hands are just the right sizes because my hands tend to get really big. I think these are a little bit too small. I think I would probably make them a little bit bigger. But that's the idea. Like here's one where like this would be something that would probably be in an actual scene. So I would try to find like one of the things that I would, again, my hands always get really big. So now I think I'm going a little bit too small. The ball of the hand is usually as big as the eyeball, right? So so I needed to make sure that at least that the size of his hands don't get any bigger, too much bigger than his eyes. This is way smaller than his eyes, so I think I'm overcompensating. But that's the idea. Like that's why you do the sketchbook drawings. So here's the proportion drawing, and then I started trying to solidify this. And one of the things that I always find tricky is that the collar. And I had a long discussion with my friend about the collar. And so it was like, okay, now how do I approach the collar? What's the best way to do it? What's it look like when you're looking, when it's the horizon line is looking up at him, and then I'm just trying to work out the collar, because the collar still needs to be bending, so you can't. It's very, very tricky, but that's the minutia you have to like pay attention to. I did Lisa here. Same thing with her, the proportions, how much space between the bottom of her lip and the beginning of her collar, and the proportion, like her spikes are very, very tricky. I have a system. I figured out how to do her spikes, and you can see it here. It's all based on rhythms, based off of this ball of her head. But again, this is low angle. Lots of minutia, testing things out. I told my friend when I was doing this, I showed him my sketchbook. He's like, don't do the whole body. There's more give with the body. What you need to do is chest up. That's the most important thing. Like if you get that wrong, everything seems wrong. So I said, okay. So from that point on, all I did was try to do as much chest up stuff as possible so that I could get the face. See, notice how I'm lining up. See this line right here goes lines. The bottom of her eyeball lines up to the top of her ear. The ear is as big as the thickness of her nose. It's just like that tiny little, and that's the stuff that he was pointing out. Look at these ears are too big. It's like this extreme minutia that I don't do on storyboards because I'm trying to finish, is super important in character layout, and I was neglecting all that stuff. I knew it when I was doing 15 years of character layout, but then after 10 years or so or more doing boards, you kind of forget that that's what you do because you're so busy your deadlines are so crazy. Here I'm doing Maggie, and again, more studies of Maggie. This is usually Maggie's position. She's always getting carried, so I decided to practice doing Maggie being carried. So this is what I was practicing for the whole month. Like this took a long time. Here's Marge. Marge is extremely difficult. This spacing between the neck, I still don't think I got it quite right, but I'm starting to get it. But I think this is, even in these sketchbook drawings, the neck is way, way, way too long. Now that I'm looking at it, I would probably shrink this. This is too much. This is way too much. She looks like a giraffe. So my margins still need a lot of work, especially this area here. But And actually, so what I ended up doing was I took this knowledge, and the last few boards that I did, I was drawing the characters as tight and as character layout precise as I could, which made my job more difficult. It actually made my job 3 times more difficult. It took me 3 times longer to do the same amount of work, which meant that I was staying up till like almost midnight drawing my boards, because it takes that much longer to draw the characters just right. And since then, I've practiced doing the characters in my boards and executing the characters in my boards, which is why I'm able to even critique my own sketchbook drawings and say, oh, well, because in my boards, I'm like, yeah, her neck's too long. I think I'm better start making adjustments. And so that's why I could make that critique. And then finally, this is the last page of my sketchbook. And this is just, if you notice, looking down shots. Because when a character is like this, especially the Simpsons characters who are so flat and looking, are looking down, it gets really tricky. Looking down shots and looking up shots on the characters are extremely tricky. And you do them a ton. Because when you're acting, your head moves, right? And then you're looking down and you're looking up. And your head's kind of bobbing. Also, if your head's shaking, you do this. If your head's nodding, you do this. So a lot of that, you need to really suss out and really work out how these characters move their heads and bob their heads. So that was this page, studying that. And since then, I've also gotten a lot of really good tips on where the precise line for them looking up is. Let me see if I can, like here, like in this drawing of Homer. If I was to draw this line of Homer, see how this is over here. I would not have drawn Homer, this line all the way over here. What I would have done is I would have lined up this line, and I would have ended it right here. And that would look better. That would actually look right. So there's these little tricks that you're like, wow, there's like right there. That's where you do. It's just so much to think about. So I spent this last month doing that. And this month, this December, I'm doing animation tests. So next month for Patreons, for my Patreon subscribers, I am going to send you little quick times or video, not quick times, but videos of my animation tests, because I'm testing myself. There's a difference between being able to draw the character once and then being able to draw the character multiple times without the tricky part about, and I'll talk about this when I release the videos. But what I'm doing, these little run cycles. So I already finished a Homer and now I'm doing Marge. And the tricky part about doing the characters in motion is keeping all the masses the same. All the head shapes need to be exactly the same the whole way through, no matter how much you turn it and change it. One of the critiques that I was getting was I was using too much cut and paste. In other words, I was grabbing a character and then pasting the character's head and then just kind of modifying it a little bit. I never did that when I was working on paper. Traditionally, you can't do that. But I was doing that so much when doing character layout, because it's now digital, that it was making my work suffer. So the advice was, don't do that at all, ever. Like, just don't do it. Like, pretend this is paper and just do it the right way. And then what that does is it helps you it helps you keep your head where it needs to be. It keeps head by your the importance of what you're doing. The animation principles that you are applying are at the forefront of your thought when you can't cut and paste, right? That's the idea, that you're being forced to keep an eye on your own, on the principles, rather than letting the computer supposedly do the work for you, which makes you brainless. So that is something that I'm working on now. So that'll be next month if you want to get those videos, be able to download those videos yourself. which I will share here in the Patreon rewards video. But that's where the only place you're going to see them. Um, uh, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be working on those, and I'm going to do a run cycle for all the characters, and then maybe I'll do, and they're all tests. So none of this stuff is actually stuff that the show is working on. This is how I study to do the work on the show, right? That's the idea. None of this stuff is stuff that goes on the show. This is the process and the professional thing that you do to get the work done right. The practice, and my friend said something brilliant that I was just like, by the way, my friend, his name is Oscar Cervantes. If you look at it in the credits, you'll see his name. And I would link to anything that he's ever done, but he's not online. He's just not an online guy. He told me this, because he tells this to his son who's in hockey. He says, in practice, when you are doing in hockey practice in the sports, right? In a sport, you put your all in the practice, and you do the best you can in the practice, and you suss out all the bad in the practice, so that when you are in an actual game, when you actually have to perform, you're not making those mistakes. You make them in practice, so that when you execute in the game, you're not thinking about this stuff. This is all second nature, because you've practiced it, because you've done all the sussing out of all the mess ups in the practice part. And so that's what he was saying. Study the characters outside of work. Do all the work. Mess up all you want in the practice, so that when you do the work in character layout, you're not. This isn't the part where you're executing. You're just doing it because you've done it, because you know it. It's so obvious, right? Like, this is the kind of thing I talk about all the time. I'm like, this is. Oh, I can't believe what an idiot I am, right? Like, that's so dumb of me not to do this. So, it was such a great learning moment for me. Like this is the stuff that this is the stuff that makes me grateful to be in a position where I get critiqued myself. Having somebody be able to point out, and my friend Oscar, he's younger than me. He has worked on the show less years than me. And yet he's giving me this great advice, in spite of the fact that he feels really awkward that I am a senior to him. But he's telling me these things that I ought to have known already, right? Like he's like, I don't want to tell you this stuff because you should already know it. And that's awesome. I love that. I love that. I love that I can be taught by that. Like, that's, and it's okay. I told him, look, man, it's okay. Don't be embarrassed. Are you kidding me? If I'm not doing what I ought to be doing, you ought to tell me this stuff. This is not, you're not insulting me in any way. And that's the kind of attitude you ought to always have, no matter who's telling you anything that is actually wise and true, right? You ought never to go, who are you to tell me what to do, right? Never do that. If you do that, if you think you're wiser and smarter and better, you'll never ever improve. You'll never learn. You'll never recognize that you may be messing up. I've been doing this for so many years. I still mess up. I still get lazy. I'm a human being. I'm not perfect. So why not tell me this stuff? Why not point out when I'm slacking, right? So that's just a learning moment for everybody that's in any kind of position like this, and going into a position like this. Always be open, no matter who's telling you this stuff. You should just hear them out, listen to them, and if it's true, which everything that Oscar was telling me was true, I gotta step up. So that's what I did. Alrighty. And then finally, my postcard. I did do this. So of course I have to do this because this is the thing that I do, right? Like this is I got to do this for all my patrons, no matter what, is produce a piece to give away to one of my patrons. So and all of my patrons. So everybody who is a patron will get a high-res digital copy of this painting. However, only one of you will actually be sent in this magical envelope. The original, this original piece. And this month, the winner of this postcard is a brand new patron. She's been a patron for 2 months now, and I'm coaching her. Anita, you got the postcard this month. So congratulations, Anita. After only the second month, you were able to win the postcard. So, all right. And by the way, I do coaching. If you're interested, like Anita, the description of all that stuff is in the Patreon link below in the description of this video. Also, I have a course for pure beginners. If you want to just learn, if you can't draw yourself out of a paper bag, if you can't even draw a stick figure or a straight line, then I have a link in the description of this video for a course that I teach. It's an automated course. It's already pre-recorded, and it takes you from being able to draw absolutely nothing to be able to draw abstract cartoon characters, just like very simple cartoon characters, and then so you get from that to actually being able to actually draw something. And then what that does is it helps you be able to draw from drawing books, because if you pick up any drawing book in any bookstore or library, you will find that every single how to draw book already assumes that you can draw, which is kind of ironic because it's supposed to be teaching you to draw, but they assume you already have some kind of drawing skill, right? So for those of us who don't, I take you to the point where you have enough skill so that you could actually pick up a drawing book and start learning more advanced stuff. So if you're interested in that, there's a link in the description of this video. So hopefully this has all been helpful. This was a really great learning month for me. I'm going to continue studying the characters to improve my work at work. And I hope this has been a useful lesson to you as well as to what you could expect if you're being in a professional environment. All right, so thanks a lot for watching, and I will talk to you next time. All right, bye.